Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, but not just any episode. Not just any episode. It's the 200th episode of Deep Listens proper. Our 200th one where we cover a game. It's been more than 200 if you include the weird ones. The off the deep ends, and then the other off-week podcasts that we've thrown in. But 200 in terms of the ones that we've numbered. So welcome. Today we are going to be, we've taken some emails we're going to get to. We've got a special surprise game that was picked that I'll reveal a little bit later. But first, I am joined as always by Pete Busby. Hello, Pete.
Hello, everybody. I can't tell you how distressing it is to look into the sexual mores of dolphins. It's very off-putting. But I didn't read a book. I found a book. It's called The Compass of Pleasure, How Our Brains Make Fatty Foods, Orgasm, Exercise, Marijuana, Generosity, Vodka, Learning, and Gambling Feel So Good. And I could spend the rest of our podcast lives just pulling fun facts from this book, it seems. But I'll give you one dolphin one, and then we can move on, so this won't be all day. According to this book, at least, some male dolphins will use eels, live or dead, I don't think he specified, to pleasure themselves.
How?
How do they line it up?
They sort of like bundle it up, it seems, into some sort of eel fleshlight that they then use.
The eel must be dead for this.
I assume so, but
There's no way that they would put up with that.
Are dolphins more flexible than I think?
I don't think so. Their appendages are, I'll put it that way.
Okay.
Not talking about flippers, if you catch my drift.
I see. Okay. Well, honestly, I guess I'm happier that they roll it up that way and not just like open the mouth.
Mm.
Horrifying. Thank you, Pete. Now you've given me this nightmare.
No problem.
That other voice you just heard is the mistress of games, M. Palladino. Hello, M.
Hello. The fun fact was actually on topic for once because
Not
we're
fun, though.
talking about fish and undersea life.
That's a tease.
Dolphins are not fish.
Tell this game that.
They are
Yeah.
jerks, though.
They
Yes.
are. And
Eels. There are eels.
And for our special 200th episode, we went deep into the mines, the grinding mines, and we found a prospector, a grind father, if you will. Is that Billy? Is that Billy Rothard I see?
Oh, hey guys, how's it going?
Going good.
Just hanging out.
Hey everybody, it's Billy Rothard, aka Rothgar, from episode number 1, and I don't know, 85, 90 something episodes after that. Good to be back.
We've just been here. We've just been in this room, in this Skype call, and then you wandered in. We're like, oh, I guess it's 200 episode time.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm very excited to talk about the game that we're talking about today, and I have missed the Deep Listens community. Know that anyone who's listening who remembers the good old days, that I love you all very much, all the community, and I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, before we talk about the game and announce what we're doing there, first off, how you doing, Billy? I'm sure people in the community, they haven't heard from you in a while. How you doing?
You know what, man? Things are going really, really good. There's been like a half dozen major life events since my last episode, which I believe my last regular episode I think was in 2018, and then I came back around for like a Game of the Year episode after that. So it might have been like late 2018, early 2019 was our last appearance. And since then, I started grad school, made a career switch that like gets us through kind of like the end of 2019, early 2020. Some people may know that I used to run a tutoring company, and I started grad school to become a teacher and get my teacher license, but also that was kind of bundled in with a master's degree. And I did finish that and got the teacher license and successfully completed that career switch from running a tutoring company to being a proper high school math teacher. And that's been great. I worked at a school for 2 years to begin my career, and then I just switched from that school to my second school, the school that I'm working at this upcoming school year. And the school year just started. It's like teacher work week now for anybody who's in the know. Kids aren't back in school. They'll be back a little bit later, but like teachers are setting up their classrooms and doing all the curriculum. Outside of that, fun stuff. I wrapped up a Dungeons and Dragons campaign twice that had been 3+ years entirely homebrew.
Nice.
That was pretty crazy. I started it back during the podcast, but
I remember.
that came to a conclusion. I've been a dungeon master for like 8 years now, and I took 2 different groups through the same homebrew story. Both of them lasted more than 3 years. One of them had the pandemic in the middle, so it's kind of a cheat, but
No, it's 3 years. It counts.
yeah, there were. If you added it all together, like and spliced it together, it would probably be 3 years. And then yeah, I also met a girl before the pandemic, right before COVID hit. It was like 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. I was like talking to this girl, went on a couple dates, and then the world shut down, and we had a choice to make, which was we were either going to break up or quarantine together, for like the first 3 or 4 months when it was really kind of heavy, and people were scared, didn't know what was going on. And then, oops, 3 years later, I married her. And so now I'm an upstanding citizen, married man, public school teacher. I'm like,
You're respectable. It's weird.
I'm like a respectable citizen.
He's legit.
I do my taxes and stuff now. It's crazy.
Ugh.
Filing jointly.
Filing jointly now.
Incredible.
That's wild.
Incredible.
Although it might be better. It might be in our best interest to not. But that's a whole rabbit hole of tax code. We'll
That it
see if
is.
we actually file jointly or separately. But this is not the IRS podcast.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast.
Well, excellent. Glad to hear you're doing well, Billy. Congratulations on all of your growth. I knew when you stepped away from the show, it was to pursue, I think, your master's at that point. You were starting to, not have enough time for this silliness, this foolishness. And I'm happy to see how much, you've taken that time and how much growth you've experienced and how far your life has taken you. It's awesome. So welcome back.
If there's one lesson I can impart, and aside from silliness, this is going to be kind of serious. I'll tell this to whatever audience I can, get my hands on, which is kind of a weird metaphor. I'm not touching any
Mix
of you.
them metaphors.
Yeah. I was stuck for a long time on kind of like a funk of I don't really know, like, what's my next professional step? What's my next, like career jump or something. And, I was intimidated by a lot of the options in front of me because they were all going to be just unanimously very difficult, very hard to do. And the lesson that I've learned after that is it seems like every consecutive impossibly difficult thing I tried to do, regardless of the result, my life got better as a consequence. And so just do the thing. I know that's a very shallow piece of advice, but I'll tell you that changing jobs, real hard. Getting a master's, real hard. Like having to go to school online while holding a full-time job, real hard. Getting married, really hard. Like everything that I'm doing is consecutively harder. And if things go according to plan, not making any big announcements here, but like I'm going to be entering the parenthood game, sometime in the next year or two. Like that's going to be impossibly hard. But I think everything that I've done has been the hardest thing I've ever done, and everything just gets better around me as a consequence. So that's been like my big philosophy takeaway of the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years that I've been away from Deep Listens.
That's awesome. So go out, do stuff. Doing stuff is better than not doing stuff.
That's the whole premise.
For sure.
You've condensed it down to a bumper sticker.
Oh man, that'd be a lame bumper sticker though. We can work that up. Maybe Calvin's peeing on it. Then it's a real bumper sticker, I think.
Who's Calvin?
You never seen the Calvin and Hobbes, like Calvin, the little kid like peeing with a little like
yeah.
Okay, that's Calvin. All right, so before we get into things, Billy, do you want to tell everyone what game we played? A little tease.
Well, my good friend Gino reached out to me for the 200th episode and said, "Hey, you want to join the podcast? You want to pick the game for this episode?" And I said, "Sure." And the game that we selected is one that I played a lot recently, had a lot of fun with. It's a little game called Dave the Diver.
Excellent. So that is why all that fish stuff was said earlier. We will discuss Dave the Diver, but because it is our 200th episode, we've got more, listener feedback than usual. A reminder, you can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That is where you can email us. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. That would get you into the Discord where we had our Discord report. We're going to skip the Discord report this week because frankly, we've got emails to get to. So just getting to our emails. First email comes in from ZP, co-host of Off the Deep End. This one goes, "Hello, Deep Listens. First, congratulations in reaching this significant milestone. To think this humble podcast that started as a fun gathering of friends has become something much more than that. To be part of that ride has been an honor and a privilege. That you have invited me to tag on makes me feel like a part of you is forever inside me, and a part of me is inside you. Speaking of me making things awkward and saying things I likely shouldn't, I decided to send an email highlighting and annotating the many times and instances where you rightfully could have kicked my ass out the door. The fact that you haven't is a true testament to each of your professionalism and proof that I have truly parasitized onto your persons. So, without further ado, this is a long list. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I appeared on the main podcast and immediately made a bukkake joke during a podcast about Pokemon Snap, a game for children. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I recorded my first 3 podcasts using a laptop with the loudest fan imaginable and a headset microphone that was designed for the Xbox 360. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out for my Italian-American jokes and impressions. We still could if we wanted to, right?
I mean, this is a very good list of evidence if we wanted to bring charges about.
Speaking of, I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I discussed my world-famous salsa marinara sauce recipe and tolerated my 6 or 7 emails defending my cooking. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I repeatedly called Cosmos from Xenosaga's naval laser her belly button pussy and thought it was so funny.
What?
I kept saying it for 3 days straight.
He did say it was.
You've not been on
funny.
any content where he said that, Pete. Way to go.
You should listen to our Off the Deep End episodes if you want to hear about that.
I'm
Good
amazed
plug.
you didn't kick me out when I obnoxiously wrote 3 emails pertaining to the Namco UGSF timeline.
God, I remember that one.
I'm amazed you didn't kick me out for my pro-libertarian BS. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out for all the eating I've done on the Final Fantasy podcast and the mouth sounds I force M to edit out, labor she shouldn't have to do. I'm amazed
Thought about it.
I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I claimed Carson Edwards would have a rookie career on par with Ja Morant and Zion Williamson. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when M banned me 6 or 7 times on the Discord. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I consistently teased Pete and Gino about the 76ers and Knicks, but would get super defensive about the Kings when I should have taken it like I dealt it. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out for all of the puns and sexually explicit jokes, all of them. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I shared my t-shirt design promoting vasectomies on the Food Channel. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out.
Sit in the Food Channel.
I don't know. When appearing on the Final Fantasy IX special, and I purposely mispronounced Pete and Billy's last names in the form of puns for 4 whole episodes. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I made Gino play a hentai visual novel, and then we didn't follow that up with any editorial content and have never discussed it again. I'm amazed you didn't kick me out when I made the incredibly blue booty-based jokes on Off the Deep End. For your tolerance and patience, I thank you, and my mother thanks you. Here's to another many successful years, and remember, no matter what, you all lasted longer than the Confederacy lasted as a country.
That's true.
Thank you, ZP. So, real talk, what do we do here? We've got this list of evidence. Do we? Is this where he finds out?
I'm sure
What's the
it'll get
opposite
longer.
of ASMR? Like
Screamo.
like yeah, like
Cacophony.
him eating on the podcast, like just weird mouth noises.
Yes.
It's like anti ASMR. I get like cringy whenever I hear it.
It upsets you in a deep, guttural way?
You don't have to edit it.
Yeah, it feels like I have to fight sound.
Yeah.
I remember editing podcasts. Although I'm sure M is highly proficient at podcast editing, I
I've
got to
gotten
know
so good at it since the last time we talked about it.
the unique
Mhm.
signal that is Gino's voice and Pete's voice, and I know when a sniff or a burp shows up. I'm
Yes.
sure M has also learned how to read the tea leaves.
Yeah, I very distinctly, I'll just share this story of when Billy was teaching me to edit the podcast, he said something to the equivalent of, you'll learn to see the matrix so you can see where the ums and lingering mouth sounds are. And every time I have to do that and I go in and highlight an or a but, just by sight, I think of you.
This is what an looks like. This is what a butt
Yes.
looks like. You don't even
I
need
can-
to play it. You know.
I can identify your ums and stuttering on sight.
Oh, God.
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have crutch sounds, and I sometimes stutter. Thank you for making me
That's
look
okay.
like a better talkist than I am.
yeah, that's what we're here for.
All right, next email. This comes from Jason. Hi, everyone. Congratulations on 200 episodes. Since you said you would take some questions, I figured I would write in. Hopefully, I did not procrastinate too much in sending this. After M's year of torture, I had an idea. If you could pick any person to pluck from time to guest on a podcast and force them to play a game, what would it be? Also, what game would you show / subject them to? All right, first question.
Oh boy. Anyone from time?
Yeah, anyone.
I feel like my answer I think would just be to blow some 13th century person's mind, instantly drive them insane by what I'm showing them.
Yeah, just I'm going to show LSD, the video game LSD, to Genghis Khan.
And then he goes back and conquers the world out of anger.
That's what did it. You don't
Yeah.
know this, but in the future, I time travel Genghis Khan to the future and then show him the video game LSD, and that explains the rampage.
Gotcha.
There's a very famous scene in The Three Body Problem, the book, very good series of books, by the way, where somebody tries to build a computer out of people. So he basically assembles a 1 million person army to create a computer. I feel like that's what Genghis Khan would do. That
Is
he
that what
conquered.
that's about?
That's not what the book's about, but that's part of the book.
Oh, okay.
I feel like he would assemble, he conquered the world just so he could line everybody up and be like, I demand these humans play Frogger for me.
Make LSD, that game I was shown one time during a time travel episode.
He's been chasing the dragon ever since. Billy, do you have anyone?
I would bring Jean-Paul Sartre in to play Dark Souls.
Good get.
That was a good pick. Truly something that shows the meaningless of existence.
Oh my god, I know exactly what I would pick.
Okay.
Oh, fuck. This one's the best one. Everyone else out of the way. You know who would be great playing Eternal Sonata?
Chopin?
Chopin.
That would be really good. That just made me think of, who would be really good playing Kingdom Hearts? Walt Disney.
Walt Disney.
That's a good choice too.
Mhm.
What are
Oh,
all these
man.
Japanese doing here? Well, sorry, Walt.
Aren't we at war with them? Like, you missed some stuff. Well, welcome
Yeah.
back.
We'll catch you up.
All right, next
Oh, boy.
question in here. Additionally, if there is someone out there you would like to show a good game, I suppose you can answer that as well. Is there any person out there that you would like to sit down, like a living person, and be like, you play this, you'll have a good time?
Mm.
I'm not used to like deliberately trying to make people happy. I have to think.
Yeah. Do they have to be fun games or okay?
I don't think that you have to.
Hmm.
It could be a good game. You could be like, hey, Taylor Swift, you really need to understand everything about Demon Souls.
I need you to get
Grow.
really into the Dark Souls series. I think you would be really into Elden Ring.
You know what I'd like to do? It doesn't really matter who it is. I'll pick like football, I guess. Is if you took like Bill Belichick, or like if we're bringing people back from the dead, if you put, oh God, I forgot his name already. Who was that guy on the Niners? Doesn't matter. If you picked like a really good NFL football coach and like had them play Madden, if it would like give them a leg up or if it's completely worthless.
That would be pretty funny if they're just like spoiling over the playbook and then they're just like, crosses, it's the only play.
4 verts, just heave it downfield.
It's the only play that matters.
I feel like they'd enjoy it. I would definitely enjoy it.
Billy, do you have anyone that springs to mind?
I'm trying to think because, you know, there's like a joke answer and like a real answer. So I'm trying to figure out which one I want to go with.
Do both. You don't have to pick.
Why not? It's all content, baby.
Yes. Welcome to the show.
I would okay, let's just kind of merge them together. I would probably say, all right, I'll grab like Richard Dawkins and tell him to play the Talos Principle so someone can finally agree with me that it's not a game about God.
Sure. That's exactly what Richard Dawkins would do.
So
We were literally just talking about this on another episode. We were like, are we going to bring this up as, like, we were going to have a gotcha for you of some kind.
well, I mean, ZP, I believe, talked to one of the developers at
Yes.
a con.
Oh,
and
yeah.
told them your stance, and
Yeah.
they went, "Excuse me?
No.
No."
Burn him? Burn him now?
And this is why authorial intent is bullshit and doesn't matter.
Yeah, but like,
Don't.
How
Don't
come I'm the
weaponize
only
English
one here without
scholarship.
an English degree and I'm the one making the case? Anyway, we're not gonna hold on.
We're
We're
not
not
gonna do
gonna
this.
open
this isn't the thing we'll
long
rehash.
closed wounds.
This isn't the thing we're gonna rehash.
Speaking
We're
of
going to do
things to
Valda's
rehash,
story all over again.
You mean
get-
game of the year? Very first game of the year, Valda story, Abyssal City.
All right.
Yep.
So thank you, Jason. Anyway, congratulations again. Looking forward to seeing what you y'all do beyond the 200th episode. Take care. All right. In our last usable email, and we had a bit of feedback that I also want to throw out.
were there
No notes.
unusable emails?
Yes.
Oh,
I mean, they're just like not,
Not
they're like
questions.
not questions, and
Sterling
or like
Reviews.
they are not, they're like, hey, do you want to interview this person? And it's like, that's not going to be for our 200th episode.
mm-hmm.
Okay, this comes in from Drew. Hey, everyone. Jumped at the opportunity to write in for the 200th episode. Been a longtime listener since 2019 after I searched to see if there was a Mega Man Battle Network 3 podcast
Oh
episode.
man,
And I found your podcast on Spotify. I've
Wow.
come to find out that Pete M. and I grew up with some similar games, Fire Emblem, The Sacred Stones, Golden Sun, and Mega Man Battle Network 3. All great episodes and great games to grow up with. I ran a fairly successful YouTube channel back in the day, remastering old video game soundtracks, and those 3 games took up a huge proportion of the content. Pete might like this one from The Sacred Stones. I've got a link, Pete, I can send you.
Nice.
Anyway, what I love most about your podcast is that when you play a video game, you usually compare the theme, systems, and symbolism to what's going on in the world around us, or it just leads into a deeper discussion into different philosophies. As an engineer with no literary or philosophy training, I love having a podcast that touches on these topics and gives me exposure to them. I grew up with views fairly different from everyone on the podcast, but listening to each of you, even Billy, who I think could take a chimpanzee in a fight if it was drunk.
Okay.
Has changed the way I look at video games, society, and the world around me in ways I couldn't have achieved, and I want to thank you. I'm a more tolerant and empathetic person than I ever could have been on my own. I know you didn't set out with that in mind, but you've changed one person for the better, and with something as simple as a gaming podcast. To get a little bit more specific, Pete and Gino's analysis of financial, political, and moral systems presented in games has made me look at these structures in different ways than I ever did before. It's made me a much more well-rounded person. I love all the intriguing book and philosophy references you bring to the podcast that I would never have come across on my own as an engineer with no literary philosophy training. Just listening to you has helped me to be understanding and accepting of the trans community. I never had a chance to interact with members of the trans community in my day-to-day life until I came across this podcast. Granted, it was a one-way interaction, but nonetheless, it's helped dispel misunderstandings I had about the community that were untrue. I enjoy your game-making experience commentary that you bring to the show. It gives a good peek behind the window at times about why a game might have been made the way it was. Also, because I've listened to so many episodes where you say, the Discord report, boop-de-doop-de-doop-de-doop-de-doop. Boop-de-doop-de-doop-de-doop has wormed its way into my subconscious, and I catch myself saying it in front of teams that I lead every week, every weekly meeting. Gino, you bring a lot of humor and personal life stories to the podcast. You're not afraid to share opinions on themes or injustices you feel can be portrayed in games. The Prison Architect podcast has made me rethink some of my views on the prison system. I appreciate all the effort and content you've put out over the years, even the MTG podcast, even though I haven't played that thing in 15 years. Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. Please never change your hilarious personality or your taste in food. I'm not a food person. In fact, for 2 years of college, I quite happily and literally subsisted on nothing more than protein shakes, pretzels, vanilla yogurt, and PB&J sandwiches. Listening to the weird things you try out has gotten me to go out and actually experiment with eating different things. This may seem like a small thing to others, but to me it was a big deal. Without your unique taste in foods, I'd probably be eating the same six-ish things for the rest of my life. And Billy, even though you hadn't been on the podcast for a while, I really do miss your commentary on the podcast. Billy was a good foil to Gino and Pete, leading the conversation about game themes, political systems, etc. that went much deeper than they tend to go now. You may not have all agreed on the Papers, Please episode, but it was fascinating and entertaining podcast that also wouldn't have been such a hit for me without him being a part of it. Also, who doesn't want to hear a discussion between friends about whether one of them could take a chimpanzee? That was the funniest friends talking about stupid shit I'd ever heard. Anyways, thank you for having this podcast and contributing your time. It's genuinely entertaining to hear your talk video games life and repercussions wrought by the hyperbolized utilitarian ethical paradigms upon the societal framework as it relates to the political milieu of 19th century Russia on a podcast about Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. Feel free to use any or none of this email as a shout out for your 200th episode. While a shout out would be a highlight of 2023 for me, what's important is that I can thank each and every one of you. And yes, I am also now a Patreon subscriber. Thanks. Sorry, it took way too long. Thank you.
Aw.
Very nice email.
That
I
was
agreed
so
with like
sweet.
95% of it,
Yeah.
except for the ZP parts. They were a little off there.
So that means you agree with the drunk chimp? What? Nice.
How drunk? Like
I
poison?
think that would make it worse. I think that would make it more deadly.
It's a master of drunken boxing somehow.
Yeah.
I
Drew,
just
I'm-
think, I mean, it's a bell curve. I think it gets more dangerous up to a point and then significantly less dangerous.
Yeah. Drew, I'm glad that I could have been on the 200th episode to hear that great feedback, and I'm glad that I contributed some part of a really positive experience. As a teacher now, I get a lot of those, but every one of them is unique and special.
Yes, thank you very much. I set out to found. I made this podcast now. Oh God, is it 8 years ago?
It's been that long.
It was
been-
2013,
15,
So-
or
15.
2015.
2015, 8 years ago. I set out to do it, frankly, because I was thinking at the time of maybe getting into game coverage in some way, and it seemed like podcasts were the way to do that. And that was my thought process. I couldn't keep writing. I was writing articles all the time, like one a week, and I was like, this is too much effort. And also no one reads articles anymore. So I'm going to get experience making videos, and I'm going to get experience making podcasts. And over time, I realized that's not a career for a lot of people anymore. Like getting into game coverage from scratch. If you did not have one of those jobs in the late aughts, the chances of you getting one now and actually making that a career that you can support a family on are like 0%. I think at this point, very close to zero, unless you hit the lottery on an algorithm and happen to make it big on Twitch or YouTube. So at that point, I was like, you know what? It's just fun talking to my friends all the time. And when I founded the show, I was like, who would I want to talk to every week or every other week that I wouldn't otherwise get an opportunity to? And I thought, my good friend Billy, my good
his
friend
top
Pete.
8 choices, all declined. So we ended up with Billy and Pete.
Yeah. And so it was just a space to stay connected with friends who I otherwise might not have been able to, and talk about games and, Pete, you and I were in English classes a lot together. Like analyzing literature is something that I very much enjoy, and getting to train those muscles and continue thinking about things in a critical way and learn is something I've just always been interested in. And when Billy bowed out, I was thinking, who is a person who can add to this discussion in a way that, balances us out, right? Like Pete and I have similar backgrounds, though Pete has more philosophy. I have more programming experience. And so I thought, one thing that we've been lacking as a show is someone with actual game design experience, game making training. And so thankfully M was gracious enough to join the show and take over. But yeah, it's been so cool and so rewarding to be doing the show for this long. And I appreciate all the listeners we have had over the years. The folks who are in the Discord, who we talk to every day, the folks who just chime in every once in a while, and the folks who I don't hear from, but I know you're there because I look at the statistics and I know there's someone out there in countries that I would not expect to listen to this ridiculous show. We were the number one we were a top 10 gaming podcast in Venezuela for a short amount of time. I don't know how that happened. Clearly someone was listening. So thank you everyone who has participated in this show over time. It means the world to me. That's my spiel. Pete, what do you got? Do you have any comments or thoughts?
So when I joined this podcast, I thought this was going to be like the way conservatives are always talking about, we're sneaking Marxist indoctrination into the youth. That was my plan. I was like, this will be the way I finally bring a strong Labor Party to the United States. Hasn't panned out that way. I'll be honest. I haven't achieved all my goals. But I agree with Gino. It's been an excellent way to just chop it up with some good friends over some good games and some terrible games. Just sometimes more fun for the past, dear Lord, 8 years. So never regretted joining, and I hope I never will for the next, let's say, another 8 years, and maybe we'll reevaluate then.
Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brotherhood.
My life's richer for having experienced it.
Silent Hill 4: The Room.
Man, you missed some Silent Hill coverage. That was beautiful. Let's go chronological order. Billy, do you have any thoughts?
I think that the podcast experience for me and the reason why I joined is part of what you said, which was an opportunity to connect with some friends of mine that I wanted to talk to on a regular basis, and it certainly achieved that goal. And the podcast for me developed a habit that I kept long after I stepped away from the Deep Listens show proper, which was articulating complicated thoughts in sometimes a disorganized manner, but then it kind of forces you to organize them and sort them in a coherent way. It made me a better thinker, made me a better speaker, made me a better listener, and I was able to I think, engage with people and ideas that weren't my own on a totally different level. And that's something that I still do now. Some people might know that when I might have talked about this when I was on the podcast, probably in very early episodes. But when I was a kid, I had a speech impediment. I had a stutter. And I rarely, if ever, stutter. And part of it's because I rehearse so much of my day-to-day speech. I remember prior to the podcast episodes, I would type up documents like, I know I'm going to want to say this about this game, so I'm going to make sure that I type it out so I make sure that I say it the way I wanted to. But, it never really turns out that way in like heated discussion. You always kind of ad lib and go off script. But the weekly pattern of gathering your thoughts, organizing your ideas so that they can be presented publicly was a good habit for me like outside of college, where there wasn't a reason to structure your ideas anymore in the post-college nebulous working world. That I kept that habit through Deep Listens, and I've kept it since. And that was a really impactful thing for me, like a thing that I picked up that I didn't know I had. So thanks, Deep Listens culture, Deep Listens as a weekly ritual, for helping me build that skill. And
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome.
M, any thoughts?
I'm glad you guys all like it, because I was going to say I hated it. And I'm retiring right now. No, I like being here. Being invited on this show was probably one of the better things to come out of my experience at the game shop that Gino and I worked at.
Yeah.
It's a big part of my life, games and doing this show, and getting to experience like a new game every other week has been really grounding, I think. I hope I've become a better speaker than when I started, because I was not doing very much vocal work before I got invited along. So I think that having the Discord has also been a really good part of my, 9/10 of the time when ZP isn't posting something terrible, it's a good part of my day. And then the other part, I'm going to kill a man one day, but we'll worry about that when it happens. Would not change it for anything. Unless it would make me a lot of money, in which case maybe I would change it for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Socialism's like good, but so is lots and lots of money.
Yeah. I would like to echo that whole like playing a game every 2 weeks, especially games that I would not have touched otherwise, it's really expanded my palette for games, just in general. Like, if I was left to my own devices, I might have just played the same 20 games over and over and over again, just because of that's how I tended to play things. I would just revisit the same stuff over and over and over again, and having an impetus to try new things and expand my horizons and meet new people and all that sort of stuff. It's been a very fulfilling experience, and I wouldn't have it without all of y'all.
Gino would be on his 900th playthrough of Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah. And I'd be like, why don't people love this game as much as I do?
It's still as good as the first time.
Why aren't you talking to this NPC 7 times so he tells you his terrible story? He's there. Look at him. Yeah. So this is working. This is much better. All right, so without further ado, I think it's time to talk about video games. What do you all think?
Almost an hour in.
Perfect. Nailed it.
Yep.
Speaking of dolphins brutalizing eels.
That's not the only thing they brutalize. Trust me. Look at dolphins. They're horrible. They're the assholes of the sea.
It's really not an urchin? I feel like or a barnacle? I feel like that's the asshole of the sea.
Well, like dolphins get high on puffer fishes too.
What?
Yeah, I've used that one before.
Yeah.
I know, but that's still cool.
Yeah, it is still cool. They kill for
Run out of
sport.
fun facts.
They're one of the only other animals that just kill for fun.
Yep, they're one of the few animals that has sex for pleasure too.
Good for them. Billy, you picked Dave the Diver. Why don't you tell us what Dave the Diver is about?
I would love to. First, I want to give a shout out to my wife, Sammy, who's the one who actually got me to play Dave the Diver. She just, I think, saw it on Steam one day and was like, "Babe, this looks fun. You play it so that I can watch it." And I said, "Okay, that sounds fun. Like, I love it when we play games together, but I don't know anything about this game, so I don't know. I'll give it a shot." We picked it up. We really liked it. So, yeah, Dave the Diver. How do I explain what this game is?
Let's say what it facially is, and then
Yeah.
we can say what it reveals itself to be.
So, simply put, I would say Dave the Diver is a restaurant management sim with recurring cycles of exploration, similar in nature to a roguelike in that you do a run and you get further and further with each run, but your run doesn't usually end when you die. It usually ends when you have collected all of your desired fish as you
'Cause you're a
scuba
diver.
dive. Yeah, because you are a diver.
You're Dave.
Dave, the diver. You dive into a unique, how should I put it? A unique
Hole.
marine biology.
It's the
I wasn't going to call it a big blue hole immediately, but it's called the Big Blue Hole somewhere in what appears to be Hawaii or the Hawaiian Islands or some Pacific island chain.
well, the Big Blue Hole exists.
Does it?
Yeah, that's a real place.
Is
It's
that
not
a
really
real
like
place?
yeah, it's not like the Deep Blue from One Piece where like just different fish show up all the time. But yeah, it's a well-known diving place.
Oh, well,
And
is it?
it's the Great Blue Hole. It's a tourist attraction in Belize.
interesting.
Mhm.
Well, this seems to be like Pacific Island chain.
Yes.
And in this particular Big Blue Hole, the geography, the underwater geography changes each time you dive in, or periodically it will change, leading it to be kind of a roguelike mission where you go and collect fish, collect items, bring them back up to the shop, and sell that in your sushi shop. So that's the general premise of Dave the Diver. There's a lot more to it than that, and I'm sure we'll get into that momentarily.
Yes. So you are Dave. You are spearing fish with a harpoon gun, generally, and you are taking the fish to Bancho Sushi. Bancho is your sushi chef. He can turn anything into sushi. The more exotic the fish, the more you can charge for it. Usually, the deeper down it is, the more you can charge for it. And generally, the more unsettling the sushi looks like, I find. Because most of the sushi looks kind of like the fish that you caught, but in miniature, which is bad when it's like a fang fish. So, Pete, when you first started this game, what did you think was going to happen? What did you think was the loop here? And when did you
Besides the
notice something was up?
Besides the fact that LeBron James is the sushi chef.
Yeah, Bancho's a boss. I thought it was going to be almost. I thought it was basically just going to be what it was. Like it was going to be an Iron Chef sort of competition, where Bancho had these like increasingly elaborate dishes you had to find ingredients for, and you continue to upgrade the sushi shop until eventually it became the greatest sushi place in the land. I'm trying to think of when I noticed there was like a distinct turn. I mean, there are a few turns in this. There are some gameplay turns. There are some story turns. I think my thought was Cobra was going to be Cobra's your what do you even call him?
Supplier?
Yeah, he's like the guy who comes
Handler?
up with the idea. Yeah, I thought Cobra was going to be evil because he
Financial
is
backer.
very shady.
Yes.
Like he's
Name is
constantly sort of like
Cobra.
yeah, he's like maniacally rubbing his hands together in the background. Like he's a shady guy, and I thought he was going to be bad. That was going to be like the twist. I was wrong.
And what about you? How long did Dave the Diver make you think it was a regular like roguelike kind of like restaurant management game plus diver?
Yeah. I think I really started to get the idea when we got to the dream sequence, where you are like doing a anime girl crowd
I think I
like
forgot about that.
DDR
Rhythm
thing.
game?
Yeah, this was way later. This is not the actual turn. I'll specify for our listeners. You, what are all the? We got to get into like all the things that you do in this game because it's very. It's a lot.
Yes. I would say
It starts with diving, and then it
It does.
goes from there.
it's one of the most overwhelming games that I've played in a good amount of time, simply because of the amount of things that they throw at you. Like it starts.
How does it compare to a contemporary Monster Hunter game?
I mean, is Monster Hunter? I have not played a contemporary Monster Hunter, but does contemporary Monster Hunter yell at you about 7 mechanics every time you load up a save?
Have you played any Monster Hunter game?
No.
Oh,
What-
well,
look at
you're,
me.
You're missing out. Sorry,
We'll
it's
add
kind of
that
a
to the
meme
list.
that Monster Hunter games have lots of systems in the game, but like every new Monster Hunter game needs to have all the old systems and a new system.
Mhm.
To keep to whet the palates of the of the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave the Diver, the character Dave the Diver has more apps on his smartphone than I have on my actual smartphone in real life.
Mhm.
Same.
Yep.
Horrifying. It stressed me out just opening up his phone.
Oh God!
So
And I
so
don't
hold-
like things on Instagram. I don't do that in real life. I don't
Sorry,
have
that's
Instagram.
Cooksta.
Cooksta.
Cookstagram.
You're right.
Cookstagram.
Yeah.
So just let me lay out something here, a little bit of a defense of this chaos. This game has a lot going on, and I'm sure we'll unpack it. Maybe now is the time. But
Yes, now is the time.
we described what the game actually is, normal gameplay, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna open your sushi shop at night. You get one dive in the morning and one dive in the afternoon. Then you open your sushi shop. Yeah, you can have a nighttime dive later in the game, but like that's a later thing. Normal pace of play is morning dive, get a bunch of fish. Afternoon dive, get even more fish. At night, you sell your sushi. That's the normal gameplay. But I think without all this chaotic bullshit that they added to the game, it would get really repetitive really fast and be not as fun of a game as it is.
I agree. For sure.
Yes.
Like
Now-
what sets this game apart is that it's 10 games.
Yes, there's little bits and pieces of like 10 different games, and so when you're bored with the normal monotony of dive sushi, you can just take every now and again they'll throw a little story thing in at you. That's, oh hey, this is a Metal Gear Solid game now, or hey, don't you like Stardew Valley, or remember when Tamagotchi was a thing?
Or here's an infinite runner. Do you like infinite runners? Is that a thing you want to do?
Yeah.
What if instead of focusing on getting the fish that you want for your sushi, you just wanted to murder lionfish? Just kill them dead. What if that's what you wanted to do? What if there was a weapon upgrading system in this game where you could take shells and turn them into machine guns?
There are like actual video, like mini games on his phone that, as far as I can tell, have no bearing on the actual gameplay whatsoever. These are just things you can enjoy while you're waiting on the boat to dive.
Yes. There's like there's like a racing game on your phone that's just there to be enjoyed.
Yes.
I don't
You're
even think that-
Tamagotchi. You don't have to mess with it.
There are Steam-based achievements for some of these, but as far as I'm aware, there is no in-game reward. And actually, let me bring up one thing that was a critique of the community, because I'm pretty tapped into the Dave the Diver community.
Of course you are.
There was kind of a critique that when you do all of your so in Dave the Diver, there's a app on your phone called, I don't know how to pronounce it, Gaia or Gio or whatever like that. It's essentially a Tamagotchi, raise a little digital pet on your cell phone. And you can get an achievement for raising, I believe it's 5 of them, from egg to fully grown random creature. And if you raise all 5, you get a Steam achievement. If you're able somehow to raise all, whatever, like 10 or 15 there are, there's no reward. You don't even get a cutscene with the NPC who talks with you about this originally. It's just kind of like nothing is there. So some of these mini games, people have said, I think it's funny that you added this to the game, but I wish there was literally any reason for me to put more than 5 seconds into this.
May
If you
the
didn't like that, boy, do I have bad news to you for you about Tamagotchis.
May the Lord strike me dead if I ever degenerate to the stage where I care about Steve achievements.
Yeah.
I hope I die
Well-
on the spot.
I don't care about Steam achievements either, but I'm saying at least you got a Steam achievement for getting 5 of the things raised.
My 10 Digimon that are dying in the corner back there, when I raise them up to be big and strong, nothing happens to me. They just die of old age eventually. They don't love me at all, that I can tell.
But jokes aside, I think it was good to have these periodic breaks in gameplay
Yeah.
so that the game never got so stale. Because
I did-
the regular pace would get stale really fast.
I did always appreciate when a boss fight came through in my sushi restaurant simulator.
Yes. So I feel like we should break down some of the other games that are contained within this game. First, I think there's like a crafting element, right? There's weapon crafting. You early on, it turns out any weapon you pull out of the Great Blue Hole, because there are weapon chests, any weapon magically vanishes whenever you leave the water. So in order to make permanent weapons, you have to get wood and crafts, etc., and provide it to... Em, how would you describe your gunsmith in this game?
Duff.
Are you familiar with the term weeaboos?
I'm not. I would like that elaborated, please.
Yeah, these are people who consider themselves very big fans of Japanese animation, and are usually depicted in this sort of sedentary,
Slovenly.
speckled. How
Got
else would you describe Duff?
He really, really likes his tiny figurines.
He really likes his
He
anime
sleeps
girls.
with a body pillow.
He
That's
looks
in
like he'd
the
be
shape of an
sticky
anime girl.
if you touched him.
He does look
Yes.
like he'd be sticky.
He
Yes.
wears fingerless gloves all the time.
I think they're
Pretty
carpal
sure,
tunnel gloves.
unironically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he just, whenever he talks to you, he references his favorite anime and its catchphrases.
Mhm.
So he will make you guns. And
This man should have access to so many guns.
he really
No,
shouldn't, but
probably
it checks out
But
that he does.
goddamn, he's an expert.
He is. He's good at what he does.
He
He's
is.
a master craftsman.
So you can make guns. There's a crafting system. Duff, you'll need to find certain items for him, and then he'll make you a gun. It's also Pokemon Snap.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
Pokemon cards.
There's also
a
Pokemon cards.
direct Pokemon reference in the guy who gives you the Pokemon card system.
Fishmon.
Dressed
Yeah.
as Ash Ketchum.
What is it called? It's
He's like old divorced
It's called
Ash Ketchum.
Marinka
Marinka.
for like marine cards, I think.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Whenever you get a fish, you get a card.
and
if
its
you
level
do
of rarity changes.
If you do a better job of capturing the fish, like if you kill the fish, it's 1 star, but if you catch it alive, you get 3 stars, and it's shiny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And this was very compelling to me, so I collected a lot of the cards.
The NPC that gives you the Marinka thing is Sato. His name is Sato.
That is also a Pokemon reference, because I believe Satoshi is Ash's name in Japanese. So, there
that's
you
why He's
go.
divorced. He's
That's some
divorced Ash
lore
Ketchum.
right there. I didn't have that.
yeah, deep lore. See,
That's
this
a
is what I
different
bring
podcast.
to the table.
Gino referenced Pokemon Snap, and that's because there's a NPC named Udo, who is kind of a mousy little photographer who wants you to take certain pictures of unique fish in their natural environment. So you do have a little Pokemon Snap element in the game.
You get a little cooking mama too in some of the sushi scenes.
Yep. You get
Yes.
some, I would say WarioWare kind of stuff, like
Yep.
one-off.
Yeah.
Here's a soldering iron. Go solder something by following the line, or there's I
And
guess
you have
fog
to-
on your
you have to-
lens.
Yeah, you have to
And rub it
unfog your
off.
lens. You have to like glue on a piece of a statue. So
You
there's like an
gotta-
occasional mini game there.
You got to scan something. You got to
Oh, yeah.
scan a tablet.
Yep.
There's a lot of like dragging your cursor over things. The game becomes, like you said, Billy, it becomes Metal Gear Solid for a little bit. It becomes a stealth game. There are parts where the game it has boss battles, so it's just undersea fights. Like you're not trying to catch
Mhm.
fish. You're just doing rule of threes Nintendo style boss battles.
You get a bullet hell on occasion.
Yep.
You
Side
do?
scroller.
Mm-hmm. And let's
It
see.
becomes brothers for a bit there, where you're controlling two characters.
Oh, yeah.
And
It
Forgot about
does. Yeah. I was actually thinking more like Thomas Was Alone in the time where you get, was it James?
yeah,
Thomas and
that
James.
checks out too. It becomes a platformer for some bits. There's a different stealth section where you have to chase a cat if you befriend the cat.
Oh man, I
There's
forgot
seahorse
about
racing.
seahorse
There's
racing.
chocobo racing.
Yeah,
Yep.
there is. We forgot the Stardew Valley.
Oh yeah, there's
There's a
Farmville.
farm.
You just have a farm too, and you have to raise your chickens and plant your crops.
And then eventually you get a seaweed farm under the sea.
You do.
And you have to tend to that farm too. And then there's also the management of there's a management sim to running your sushi restaurant. Like you need to hire people. You can train up your hirees. You need to unlock new recipes. You run the shop, and then, you get orders and have to make sure that the orders get to people on time. You can upgrade your sushi. What ended up being your best sushi?
Like value or
Boy.
taste.
Let's do both. What
Taste.
value then taste?
I think for me, I got pretty ultra late game, but I think the highest taste dish that I had was a single piece of Dunkleosteus sushi, which is the possibly like the last biggest fish you get in the game as far as taste is concerned. And then I think my highest value dish was kind of flipping back and forth between I think it might have been deep sea tempura or one of the other dishes that requires multiple ingredients and makes multiple servings. Those dishes are typically bad in the early game, but then in the late game they outpace substantially all of the single sushi, single piece fish sushi. I think
Pete-
my highest
Oh, go
highest
ahead.
value was like 1,300 per serving.
Oh wow,
It's a lot of
that's
sushi.
expensive
I
sushi.
think it can get higher. I don't think the community has like cracked perfectly the price scaling, but I think it'll probably top out around 1,400 or 1,500 on the best recipes. That's per serving, and some of those
people are
recipes
rich.
will make. Oh yeah, I mean I'm pulling in like 100K a night.
Damn.
Jesus.
I have nothing to spend it on except just training my backbench of employees up to level 20, which costs like 400,000 or 500,000.
Wait, you can go up to level 20? I topped out at 8 and was like, that's enough.
It matters when you open your second restaurant.
What?
What?
Yeah, you can
Y'all didn't
franchise.
open a second restaurant?
No.
Where's the second restaurant?
It's in the background of the first restaurant. It's like far down on the other end of the island, so you can see it, but that's a little more story and lore. So if you want to do that now, we can, or we can say
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask, Pete, what was your favorite sushi?
Yeah, to no surprise, Billy paid way more attention to the numbers than I did. I based what sushi I served on which fish I liked killing the most. So I liked hunting sharks, so I served a lot of shark.
What about you? Favorite sushi?
Yeah, I sorted my sushi by highest price every night, and then I just picked the top ones most of the time. So Usually those ended up being like some shark dish because I had a lot of shark meat to upgrade them with. And the more you catch, the higher it gets upgraded. So usually it scales up pretty quickly. But I had stuff like smaller things that were getting up to like into the 15 level range, which depending on how small they are, it doesn't bring them up by a lot. But like you could go down there and you could just catch like seahorses, and those are very easy to catch once you have the net to catch them. Also, you can catch things with a net.
The butterfly net.
Butterfly net. You use a whole
Nautilus.
bunch of different contraptions to catch things.
Special gloves to pick up stuff.
Yeah, you
Like
can pick up
urchins.
urchins. You
Get a
can
drone.
catch like big things with it's like a little submarine. I
It's
don't
an
even know what to
undersea
call it.
drone, is
Yeah,
what they call it.
I guess that is the drone. Yeah, it goes places.
Yeah, my favorite. So I invested heavily in shrimps because they are, like you said, very easy to catch. You
Yep.
just get them in a butterfly net. They give you a relatively high amount of yield, and they hardly ever run. And when you catch something with 3 stars, which means you put it to sleep and caught it, or you caught it with a butterfly net, usually those are the 2 ways you catch something undamaged. You
The
usually
net
get
gun
roe.
will work too, but
Yeah.
Yep.
Would y'all?
Any sort of net. You
Have I
get
given
roe.
y'all a shrimp fact before?
No, you haven't.
We could have a
Would
shrimp
y'all-
fact.
Yeah, would y'all mind if I just ruined shrimp for you?
Sure.
can't wait.
I don't eat meat.
Sure. Yeah, Gino, you won't like this one, but you'll recognize why it's so disturbing. So shrimp, first off, farming shrimp is ecologically disastrous. But setting that aside, even there's this weird thing with shrimp where if you remove one of their eyes, they mature at light speed. So one of the processes
fuck?
in shrimp farming is to just pluck out the shrimp and remove one of their eyes, and then they grow way faster.
What?
Yeah, I think it's called shrimp ablation or eye ablation.
Barbaric.
That's fucked up.
I
didn't-
will not stop eating crunchy tempura shrimp sushi on a
Yeah.
regular basis, but now I will know that it's way more metal.
Yeah, it's eye stalk ablation is the name of the process.
I didn't know that there were animals that grow better if they suffer.
Are they like are they like Saiyans?
Yeah.
If they have a near death experience, they just come back way stronger?
They produce more eggs. So if you ablate their eye stalks, you get more shrimp.
So they're
That's,
like, the
you
end
know-
is the end is near. I got to get this stuff done.
Basically,
And then
yeah.
it's-
Wait, so
I
it doesn't
guess
like
so.
accelerate their anatomical growth. It makes them reproduce faster or at a larger number?
You're getting further than I was prepared to answer, Billy.
Oh, okay, all right.
I
Sorry.
don't have the full science. They actually found out when they were overcrowding tanks and the friction of the shrimp all swimming in one direction and like pushing on the outside shrimp, their eyes just wore down against the tanks. And then eventually they found that this was a productive process in shrimp farming. So they started doing it on purpose.
Help.
Horrific.
Well, I raised shrimp in Dave the Diver because when you catch a 3-star fish, they tend to drop eggs, and you can send those to your fish farm, which is your 3rd farm that we didn't mention earlier.
Oh God, yeah.
And that farm will just passively make more fish, and shrimp reproduce like crazy, so you can get a lot of shrimp very fast. My favorite sushi, because it's a nightmare, is the narwhal sushi.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they put a narwhal in an ice area that opens up towards the end of the game. There's 2 things that are upsetting about I'll start with 2. Let's start with 2 things that are nightmarish about the narwhal sushi. One, did any of you catch a 3-star narwhal?
I definitely harvested some narwhals. I don't know that I caught any alive.
I 100%ed Marinka, so I 3-starred everything in the game.
Okay, Billy, if I ask if you did something, we assume you did.
Okay, well, look, I didn't want to be rude and not answer your question.
That's fair. That's fair. If you catch a 3-star narwhal, you can get narwhal roe, is what they call it.
They don't have roe.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't, Pete.
Isn't it a mammal?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much is.
Definitely are.
It shows up in your menu like it's a shark egg. Horrifying. So that's terrible. And then when you serve the sushi, it's got a tiny horn on it.
Oh my god. Why? Why, Dave?
You know, that's very rude of Bancho to like style the corpse this way.
This is also the man who is like, I'm gonna put a shark's head on a plate.
Yep.
That's gonna
All the
be-
teeth.
Yeah.
The cheek meat's really good. You need to keep it on the skull, or else the
Deep
cheek meat.
fries the whole head
hmm
of a reef shark.
And
Yes.
just puts it on a plate and hands it to some poor woman. She's not the villain here.
No, actually, she's the savior and the provider of the second restaurant.
Oh,
Sure.
is that I got up to that and I didn't. I finished the game before I finished that cooking competition, so I guess I was at the precipice of second restaurant.
Did you get to the Italian chef, Gino, and you're like, well, clearly Italian food's the greatest in all the world. I don't need to verify that.
I got to the second chef and I finished the story before that mission. So I've technically, if I restart the game or if I play the game again, I am on D-Day of that event. I can, I guess, unlock my second restaurant. Horrifying. Okay, so the story here, you start out with just like, I'm Dave. Oh, we didn't say, there's also an app that like tracks your ecological standards, I guess. Like
Yeah, you
go-
like collect specimens for local researchers, kind of.
Yeah, you kill invasive fish or you collect shells or whatever. And that's a way that you can unlock accessories, because there's an accessory system on top of there being a weapon system. There's also an upgrade system for all your equipment. You can pay money to dive deeper and have more oxygen. We didn't say your health is your oxygen. So,
This is what makes it kind of a roguelite game in that the better you are at diving and collecting fish, the more money you make, which you then turn into paying for upgrades for your suit, for your oxygen tank, for your carry capacity, for all sorts of things, your harpoon, your knife. These can all be upgraded, which make your subsequent runs stronger. And so it's probably not quite right to call it a roguelike game. I don't think it really fits that model perfectly, but it draws from some of those elements.
yeah, for sure. It's run based. I mean, the further in you get, the less likely you are to die. Like almost all of my deaths happen in the first hour or two of the game, and then you just get your oxygen tank high enough that it's very hard to die from that point on.
And my actually, since we're still kind of adjacently on characters, my wife made a very clear point that she'd be very upset if I did not bring up her personal favorite character, Dr. Bacon,
Ah, yes.
who is an archaeologist and pivotal in a lot of the story progression. Since we're kind of getting into the story now, I think it would be wise to mention Dr. Bacon is an archaeologist who is fascinated with the big blue hole and rumors of ancient civilizations in that area.
Question, Billy, what is the name of the rapper?
MC Sammy.
MC Sammy's my favorite character because his rap song,
Hot
Pepper Tuna, is amazing.
It's actually a banger.
It's a banger. Hot Pepper Tuna. Oh, it's man. They made a song. They made multiple songs in here. They made a fake anime song for the dream
You got a whole
sequence.
Playlist that you can switch between. You got like 16 tracks up there.
Oh, I didn't even try putting those on. I didn't think Hot Pepper Tuna would be on there.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's on
you can
there.
listen to the song in its entirety. Like it's a 3.5 minute song.
My only complaint with that system is that as soon as you close your phone, it turns off the music.
Boo!
Yeah, I wasn't gonna just sit there and listen to it. I wanted to like put a song on and then have that be the background for
Of
when I
your
was
next
diving.
dive.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I want to be jamming a Hot Pepper Tuna as I am spearing tunas. All right, so turning our attention to the story of this, you start out, you're just diving, they're throwing mechanics at you. Like, every time you dive, you come up and some schmuck, like, boats up to you and goes, hey, here's a new app on your phone. go do this for like what, 20 minutes, 30 minutes? Like the first hour or two of the game is that.
Yeah.
Every time you get up.
I would describe this as the like mobile game on ramp.
Yes.
Every time you complete a level in a mobile game, they're like, "Hey, I think you're ready for learning a new system," and it's very much in that design space.
Yes, it is. It is assaulting you with mechanics and characters.
Yeah, this is a bit of a critique, and some people on the discussion boards talked about this, and me and my wife talked about it because we, again, play this game a lot, that this, I think, could have been remedied if you just made it so that you, like, it put the NPC interactions in, like, a queue, and you only got, like, one per day or something, so that it not only paced out the introduction of these things a little better, but you didn't feel swamped by, like, 4 NPC interactions all at the same time after you come out from a dive.
There's a line of boats. Like, there are some times where you come up and one person will boat up to you, say their piece, they'll leave, and then another person will come immediately after them. I'm just imagining just 3 people circling your one boat, waiting for Dave to break water. It's a lot. And early on, you don't know how efficacious any of these mechanics are, how many of these you need to care about. It feels very overwhelming. And then eventually you realize, okay, like the fish cards, they're just for achievements or whatever. It doesn't really matter that much. Or the Eco Watch, I'll probably get this done by accident, just by doing dives. I don't need to try and do every single mission. This is just going to pump missions at me. And I don't necessarily need these accessories. So you eventually learn to triage, but that first 2-3 hours is just overwhelming.
It is a lot, yeah.
And so, like, you get the introduction of what's going on with the restaurant. You find out Bancho's backstory. Pete, what happened to Bancho? Why is he at a no-name well, I guess it's named after him, but why is he at a weird restaurant in the middle of nowhere with a diver he just met?
So
as his only
Bancho's story.
supplier?
Yeah, Bancho was working at a luxury hotel, and I guess at that point, an ex-actress came to the hotel as a food critic, a food reporter, and ordered sushi. And this is when Bancho had his bright idea to slap down an entire fried shark's head on the table. She was a little bit upset about that, a little nonplussed. So she gave a scathing review without even trying it. Didn't even try the fish head that Bancho had so lovingly fried for her. And it basically tanked Bancho's restaurant career. Basically, he's an artiste who refuses to compromise.
Yeah, he basically like went up into the mountains to train on how to make sushi or something. And
Yeah.
It's fair to say every time you do something in the sushi restaurant, they play some incredible cutscenes.
Oh,
I
kick-ass cutscenes.
Love those cutscenes.
Incredible.
The cutscenes in this game happen when you upgrade a piece of sushi, when you research a new recipe, when you make a new gun, when you upgrade a gun, when you upgrade your Cookstagram rating, when you complete a special guest challenge. I think those are all of them. Maybe I'm missing one. But there's so many
and story, like random story moments.
Yes. Oh, and when you obviously buy dumplings from Mima's restaurant, obviously.
Obviously.
So the thing about these cutscenes is that they are so creative and unique and different, and I sought out opportunities to get cutscenes every time I could because they're so fun to watch.
All bangers.
They're like, sometimes they're as short as like 5 or 8 seconds long. And it's just like a little sequence of Bancho playing a sitar and sharpening his. I'm sorry, a sitar is playing. He's sharpening his knife. A cherry blossom falls off and passes through the blade, splitting in half. While
Did y'all-
And then it zooms in on a fish, horrified in the background.
Did y'all catch the Da Vinci reference in the gun
oh
cutscene
yes,
too?
what was it
Yeah,
on the Sistine Chapel with the finger touch thing?
Yeah.
Yep, the birth of man, and we have our sticky gunsmith touching fingertips with his robotic arm. Glorious.
So good, so
That's
good.
great. I mean, him just like staring at his little figurines for inspiration is great. Jumping into a pool so he could shoot his underwater guns appropriately.
And then doing like the throw the hair back out of the water thing.
Yeah, that's really good. I like whenever a food challenge comes up and someone tries the food for the first time and then they get transported to food heaven. Really good pixel art animations in this game. So yeah, you meet Dr. Bacon. He kind of spurs everything along because he says he's learned of sea folk, mer people, that were rumored to have been in the waters of the Great Blue Hole. As you dive deeper, you find that this is 100% true. There are merfolk down there, and you get involved in their little lives because there are earthquakes that are damaging your restaurant and jeopardizing life around the Great Blue Hole. So you have to dive down, meet with the sea people. You have to learn how to translate their language. You have to give them medicine.
Fetch quests, yeah.
You need to play chocobo racing with seahorses. And then after all of that, they tell you, hey, something's going on here. We think it's to do with our great tree, divine tree, which has it supplies fruits that are they have magical powers. And they think that something's wrong with the tree. And so the goal here is to dive deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper to the bottom of the hole where the roots of this underwater tree are, so you can fix it. What was your favorite story twist, Billy? Favorite story beat?
Favorite story beat? I would say favorite story beat was when we were introduced to the merfolk zombie creatures. I forget their exact name. They were called something.
Greygons?
Something along those lines. And so just a minor aside here. I've played through the game 3 times. The first 2 playthroughs of the game were in like early access. Okay. And they stopped the game at chapter 3. But the game was basically fully finished in Chapter 3. And Chapter 3 is when you get to the Sea People, but before they send you on their mission. There are 7 chapters in the game altogether, the 7th one being the epilogue, sandbox mode. But the first 3 chapters were released early, and the game was, like, complete up until that point. It wasn't like, half the game was unfinished. It was like, I guess technically that's true.
There were more mechanics they had to add in there as one-off bits, and then
actually almost all the mechanics were present. It was almost exclusively just story that they added after. So
there was still a light gun shooter. They just didn't have it at the same part.
What do you mean? Which
sorry, there was a side-scrolling. There was a side-scrolling shooter in the early access.
If it happened after Chapter 3, then no. Like the Metal Gear Solid thing wasn't in there because we didn't get that far in the game. But like everything that you play in this version of the game that was in that was up chapters 1 through 3 kind of was still there.
So like the backbone mechanics, your diving, your Farmville, your all that stuff was there.
All that stuff was kind of there normally. But that was, I guess, my most interesting story beat because that's when I kind of learned that John Watson wasn't the actual like BBEG of the game, and it was actually like a mishap of their own civilization that occurred. Like I thought John Watson was going to be the big bad,
and John Watson is like the front of an eco-terrorist.
I was going to talk about these guys.
Yeah, these are the guys I wanted to talk about.
Okay, Em, you go first. What do you have to say about them?
I was basically just going to cover who they are. Pete, do you remember what their name of their group is?
Oh gosh, no. It's something
Deep
dumb.
Blue or something. Sea
dumb.
Blue. It was Sea Blue.
Even dumber.
Yeah. They're supposed to be like eco. I don't know what you would even call it.
They're basically
activists.
the sea shepherds.
Yeah, they're supposed to be activists, but they end up like just causing more harm to the environment than they fix. And their leader is John Watson, who I don't know why his name is John Watson. Did we ever learn that? Because that's kind of related. He's friends
with Sherlock Holmes. That's why.
Is he?
He's just off camera. You don't see it, but Sherlock Holmes is there.
I would believe it. I think John Watson is supposed to be like an amalgam of like Western villain, like
Oh.
American villain.
Like John.
kind-
Makes sense.
Yeah, like some kind of amalgamation of like John Wayne, but also like Die Hard.
Mm.
Yeah, there's some
kinda
Bruce
guy.
Willis there.
Yeah,
Bruce
yeah.
Willis DNA for sure. Yeah, so he's
Gotcha.
a big dick. And like the first time you meet him, Dave's like, "Why are they trying to stop one diver when there's whaling ships just over there?"
Mm.
It's like, these people might be hypocrites. Oh, I don't know. And
Yeah,
when you
it's-
fight them, they have rocket launchers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's
And then
So,
you
like, John-
kill them.
true. John Watson's funny, but like, I'm not sure why ocean conservation's out here catching strays during this game.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I presumably this game is about like sustainable farm to table sushi. Like one diver going out, collecting, fish, doing his own farming, doing his own aquaculture, which cool, great, I support it. But then like conservation groups start catching some flack. I'm like, I don't really know why
Yeah.
they have to be a supplementary villain.
I was wondering about that too, because this game kind of, I'm not sure where its its support lies, because making the like Green Party in your game be the one of the enemies felt weird to me.
So the part that made me feel a little icky is when you are fishing. Towards the end of the game, you find so you go down
Kill
far
a
enough that
narwhal.
killing an narwhal sucks. But you eventually get into a glacial area, and then you eventually go even deeper down and find like preserved ancient creatures that were like thawed out of a glacier. I think it's the Iceland shark.
Greenland
Is-
shark.
The Greenland shark. So Greenland sharks, they have fun facts about the actual fish on your save screen.
Very old.
And they're very old because they grow about a centimeter a year, and they don't reach maturity for 150 years. And you just kill them. You could just harvest them with impunity. And I was just like, oh, wow, that's 150 years worth of shark right there for 27 pieces of sushi. I don't know if this is okay, guys.
Well, Gino, of course it is, because they just respawn when you go down there again.
Yeah.
There's just a
Respawn
new
tomorrow.
150-year-old shark every time, and don't worry, he'll always be there.
I wanted to ask you, Gino, as a vegetarian, did you have any thoughts about this game's premise? Being like hunting fish and then serving them?
I loved sushi back when I ate meat. So part of me was like, this is letting me engage with sushi in a safe way. I can role play being able to have sushi. And I did appreciate that they had vegetarian sushi too, just
They
like, and it ranks, it does pretty well. It's like not the worst sushi, in terms of value. So you could eventually deal in mostly vegetables, if you wanted to. It's the hard mode, but you could. I found some of the politics of the specific fish that you were killing. If it was a different kind of game, if it was trying to be a more eco-conscious game, it could have been like, I think it's Final Fantasy 13. It's Lightning Returns, where one of the enemy, like, eventually you extinct all the enemies in the game if you keep playing. There's a finite number of spawns for every enemy because it's supposed to be the end of the world. And so if you just keep killing enemies, they run out, and you eventually fight the like last living creature of that type of enemy, whatever it is. And it's like supercharged because it has the souls of all of its dead compatriots inside of it.
Heavy.
Yeah.
That's kind of sick.
It is kind of sick. Look, Lightning Returns is a flawed game, but boy, it does some stuff that's sick. So like that's where you could have gone, right? Because the Deep Blue Hole, the implication is, oh, it's so deep, it's infinite fish. It would be nice if like some of it was like, actually just because it's the ocean doesn't mean that all of the stuff under there is infinite. Because that's one of the big misconceptions about the ocean, is that like if we just throw nets in there, it's so big and vast and deep, there'll always be more fish. When in fact it's just because it's big and vast and deep, it's hard to study, and so we don't have good counts on anything. And the ability for federal governments to regulate international waters is just really poor. So like we know how few elephants are left. We don't know how few mako sharks are left.
If you
And
wanted to
actually-
be really intense about it too, each time you pulled up a fish, it could be full of more and more pieces of microplastics.
I want to jump off of what Gino said. I actually don't care that much about the eco side of it. I want a better game, and so I'll make this recommendation to the developers who are definitely listening to this Deep Listens podcast episode.
Sure.
Is there's some people are going to play the game to be optimized. I was that player. I played the game to make as much money as I could so that I could progress as fast that I could, so that I can upgrade things as early as possible. That makes games fun for me. But that meant that there's a very clear path of exactly which fish you want every single time you dive, and you just ignore everything else in the game. So one example is, as soon as you were able to dive past the first level, you should always get I can't remember, long nose sawtooth shark or whatever
the
they're called.
sharky thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that has like the saw, the
Yep.
saw nose.
It's got a saw.
There's two
fucked up.
of those.
You'll know when you see it.
A minimum of two of those. You could even get, I think, as many as 3 or even 4 later in the game. But you should just get both of those every time, because you can both serve and upgrade, and they will outpace all the other fish for like the first maybe like 2 calendar weeks of the game, because the game progresses in days. And then at some point you'll be able to get the next biome open, and then you only get this one certain kind of shark because it's the most valuable thing. And you just keep leapfrogging from the one best fish in each depth. I wish there was a reason for the game to push you away from overfishing one particular species so much. And this isn't entirely in conflict with Gino's, view of, like, that's kind of how we do it in the real world. You overfish the most profitable fish to sell because there's a market incentive for it. I was market incentivized to stuff my pockets with 40 kilograms of, sawtooth shark meat.
Pure uncut sawtooth.
Right. The good Colombian stuff.
40
The game-
kilos.
Yeah.
The game tries a little bit too, because like Bancho's whole philosophy is that, like, look, we're just eating too much like bluefin tuna all the time. You know what I mean? There's lots of other fish we should be eating too, and that's like a real problem in the fishing industry. Like bycatch, where we catch all these fish that people just don't like to eat and they just die for no reason. Whereas if people ate more fish, all fish would be more sustainable. But the game doesn't, like Billy said, doesn't go anywhere beyond like that being Bancho's philosophy.
Yeah, like one of the interesting things when you get to the glacial area, there's blobfish. And that is actually a fish that the UK, for a short while, they had overfished cod to such a degree for fish and chips that they needed new fish for fish and chips. And blobfish were very plentiful because they're an Arctic fish. And so they just started catching blobfish by the dozens. And I was like, oh, that's a blobfish. I know about that because it was used as an alternative fish for a little while. I wonder if they'll go there with this game. And the answer is no. The answer is no, they won't. Which is fine. Like, not every game has to do it, but also not every game has like Greenpeace being the villain for 3/4 of the game. So it rings a little off, but to be fair, this game is also made in Korea. It is a Korean developed game. I don't know if the fishing industry is just much bigger there. And so being more pro fishing industry might make a lot of sense. So I'm not sure.
And I can say that the game does get a lot more diverse in what you start serving as it gets later, for a couple reasons. One, the recipes that you have access to become more diverse, and so you have a financial incentive to make a bunch of different recipes because they are valuable, and there are certain events that want you to cook certain kinds of dishes, so that does kind of force variety into your menu options. But my biggest reason why I had a diverse menu is because the top tier recipes that make the most money, you simply can't acquire so much of those ingredients to fill your restaurant and your second restaurant. You max out at 2 restaurants. Your restaurant and your second restaurant, you have to have 3 or 4 dishes a night, simply because splitting the ingredients between that many locations and serving that many customers, you just can't sustain the demand for your top level dish every single night. Otherwise, you just put 50 of those things on the menu every night and make them, make infinite money. But you can't, because you simply can't support that. So only until the ultra late game, like past the prologue, do you really have the opportunity to explore with a diverse menu and be rewarded for it. And I wish it were that way earlier in the game. I guess it kind of is in the first week because you're kind of desperate and will sell anything for money. But there's like a tempo that you get into anywhere from like 20% of the way through the game to 90% of the way through the game, where you're just selling the same fish every night.
Yeah, and it's also worth saying, until you open that second restaurant, you don't need to train more staff. You don't need to hire your like 4 staff people, 2 of whom are good at cooking and 2 of whom are good at serving. Maybe you upgrade them a little bit, and then that's it. There's no incentive for you to build a stable, unless, some of them will have recipes that they know if you level them up high enough, or they might have passives that are like useful, but you don't need any of that for getting quite a sizable amount of money. And yeah. I wasn't able to research all the recipes I was unlocking just by running the restaurant normally, let alone care about, the random waitress's idea about how to serve some new fish.
I do want to talk about restaurant management with staff at some point. Let's circle back to that and finish, I guess, the major story beats. So I think it would be yeah, let me see where Gina wants to go, because I do want to talk about restaurant staff at some point.
Yeah, let's talk about the restaurant staff in the late game, because like story-wise, you find the sea people, they've got troubles, you need to take care of it. You go through a bunch of story beats, you find out that there's a problem with the tree, you take down the final boss. It's a side-scroller shooter. Like it's cool. There's a lot of cool stuff that goes on, but really you have to play it. Like, the story beats are not going to sound impressive. It's not trying to tell a freaking operatic story here. It's trying to be a fun, breezy experience. So, Billy, I wanted to ask you, since you've had 200 hours in this game.
Yeah, just under 200. I think like 180, a paltry 180 hours.
It feels like this game, as someone who played to the end of the story, it feels like it is a mile wide and an inch deep in a lot of mechanics. Like, the mechanics there, it works, it's fun. You eventually max it out. Like, maxing out the guns isn't especially hard in a normal run. Getting enough stuff so that you can sustain your restaurant with your farm without having to expand your farm is pretty easy. There's not that many eco levels or fish types in the grand scheme of things. So does this game stay fun after you finish the story mode? Like, what else is there?
Yeah, so you're kind of asking 2 questions. I'll describe the late game experience, and then I'll describe like the general pacing of beats that aren't story related, but like things that happen in your restaurant. So in the late game, like super ultra late game, it's sort of like I'm making like 100,000 gold a night, maybe more. And my main expense is training up extra employees. And the reason why, there's actually only, I think, 20 employees in the whole game. And you'll run out. You'll get to the point where you are not permitted to put up an advertisement for more employees because you've hired everyone. There's a finite cast of employees in the game. They have, various different stats and abilities like you alluded to, but there are some who are just simply the best. So there is objectively a top 6 like master list of employees. I'm not going to like go super deep into the details of like why they are the best, but I'll throw out some names. Itsuki is really good. El Nino is really good. Dre is probably the best restaurant manager. There's a couple other who are good. Maki is a character that you get story progression wise, and she actually does have one of the highest cooking skills in the game, but she's got a dump stat and everything else. Like, there are a couple of Raptor's good, Yoni's good. Yeah, there's a guy with a dinosaur head. His name is Raptor. But there's also a bunch of like regular looking people who could be in your sushi restaurant. And yeah, the goofy looking characters are stronger, typically stat wise, but everyone has their own strengths. So I have 3 staff at my main restaurant and 4 at my second restaurant. No. It's 4 at my main restaurant and 5 at my second restaurant. You have 2 servers and 2 cooks at your main restaurant. You have the same at your secondary restaurant, but you have to hire someone who's a manager of your other restaurant. And one of your employees is the restaurant manager. They basically act as Dave and performs the same functions as Dave. They're kind of a jack of all trades that can do every task, regardless of their abilities present. So you only want them to have the highest stats, and not necessarily the highest stat in one area, but I believe it is the highest sum total of all of their stats, which is why Dre is the best restaurant manager. He's kind of a jack of all trades and good at everything, but he's not going to max out any stat higher than some other characters. But he makes the best restaurant manager, and he can get your restaurant to 5-star restaurant and able to cook with level 9, which is the highest level, ingredients faster than any other character can. I think he only has to be like level 10 or 11 or something before he's maxed out the restaurant capabilities of the branch. And tragically, some other characters, although they're very, very cool, no matter how high you level them up to their max, they just don't sum total to the threshold that you would need for max restaurant. So I'm spending much of the late game, like every night, I'll just dump $100,000 into training the next employee to see what kind of recipes they give, what kind of skills they have, and that is kind of a grind, kind of a repeat. The very, very end of the game, I would say, is not that fun for me anymore because I'm just diving, and the money that I'm making from diving is negligible. Like I'm only catching the same 6 fish at the end of the game or whatever because I've got the recipes that make a bunch of money. The pacing, and this is my second major topic here, I think I got to chapter 7 really fast. And for that reason, the different like railroad tracks of events was not ideal. And I think that the game might want to look at this as a potential fix because there seems to be like 2 or 3 different concurrent like side running how should I describe it? Like it's like pace of things that show up. So the story itself, the chapters of the Sea People, that's like on one track. But then you'll get these special VIP characters who will come and ask you to cook a special dish. That seems to be on another track. Then there are these special parties where you'll be asked to serve a special kind of food. That's on a different track. And you could progress them all at different paces. Like you could progress the story way before you finish any of your VIP guest missions.
But the VIP guest stuff is on a timer. What happens if you miss the deadline?
Oh, sorry. There is a deadline, but some of them you have a long time frame for, like Maki and what's his name, the farmer guy.
Otto.
Those are
Otto.
infinite.
Yeah.
Otto's
those are
infinite.
infinite, and so that's what I mean. Some of the quests are on an infinite timer, and some of the quests are timed. But I think that very few events are actually scripted to happen on a specific calendar day. I think most of the events could happen on a different calendar day if you just waited too long or you had a bad dive and didn't progress as fast. But I think relatively experienced gamers like us will complete the quest handed to us on the next dive and won't take very long to do it. And some of us could even complete multiple quests per one dive. I think that actually creates a pacing problem in Dave the Diver. That
was my problem with the pacing.
Yeah, you kind of cram together all the quests in a short amount of actual gameplay hours. And if there were a way to kind of push them to be stretched out, it's a little better. Like at the end of the game, the only thing I'm doing now are the special food event parties. That's the only thing left for me. But they're happening so fast, I'm never properly prepared for them. Because I'm certain what probably should have happened was I have a special food event, and then I do a quest that unlocks the next special food event. But because all my quests I completed so fast, there's no speed bump for those special food events to come. So it's just like every 3 days I have to scramble to get some new obscure food, and I'm not going to have enough resources for it to serve 100 people that my restaurant can serve. You know,
Yeah.
so the pace
100
gets a little
people
messy.
want just pufferfish, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh well, shit. There's like 5 pufferfish in this stage of like all throughout the ocean. There might be like 5 pufferfish, depending on your run, and then there's no way. It's just actually impossible for you to get as many as you would need.
And so I think they need to do just a slight tweak on when some of these events can happen, or put the minimum time between them as a little bit longer. Kind of like we said earlier about not having like 2 or 3 NPCs talk to you right after a specific run. If they just put a little more required time between them, I think the flow of the game would be a lot better. Like it would lengthen the game without making any parts of it boring. People would just get more fun out of their dives and have longer to play.
Yeah, I agree. So it seems like there is a late game. It's just how willing are you to just go through parties on loop? Like there's not really.
And I think at some point the parties end. I haven't gotten to the end, and to my knowledge, I haven't seen a guide or a discussion post on the forums where it's like, "Hey, I think I got to the end of the parties. This was the last one," but I haven't checked in like a week or so. But I'm sure the parties end at some point, and then there would be no content left for me. It's just like sell more sushi to get more money, just to have it accumulate.
Just to see how big of an integer they decided to have their money.
How many digit slots they allowed you to have?
How many bits is their money integer? Let's find out.
Mm-hmm.
The lesson for life: the parties have to end at some point.
They do. They have to end at some point.
And with that, our discussion of Dave the Diver.
Can I give one more fun fact?
Yes. Okay. Damn it! My perfect transition.
I know,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but I was really excited to share this. So the sea peoples are actually a real historical phenomenon. Not like
What?
not the mer people, Atlanteans, like this game. But there is a historical group called the Sea Peoples that were responsible in part for the collapse of civilization during the Bronze Age. Supposedly they just came out of nowhere, like just came from the sea and just laid waste to like Egypt and a whole bunch of other people, and then went back to the sea again. And like nobody's really sure who they were.
That's
so they
crazy.
just showed up with boats and were just and it was
Yeah, and they're just like
shit.
yeah, they just ran up on them, blew up everything, and then pieced again. So not the reason for the Bronze Age collapse, but certainly did not help the situation.
Contributing factor.
Yes, it's cool
Have
history.
we not-
Check it out.
Have we not found like a ruin or something that would explain who these people like? Was there not a civilization that just seemed to be doing okay after all these other ones did poorly, and we're like, it must have been them.
It sounds like, from what I can tell, again, no historian, it seems like the best hypothesis is like, oh, this was a confederation of like seafaring tribes.
Okay.
But right now we don't have an answer like, oh, these were the Mesopotamians or whatever. No.
Okay. Well, you might not know, but just wing it. It's a podcast.
Yeah, take a stab.
Like I've not made up some bullshit on this podcast
Yeah.
at some point.
You just say anything as fact. No one's gonna check it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It was the Irish.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh wow,
They
Yeah.
were the Sea Peoples.
That checks out.
Dark horse.
they do love the sea. That's true.
So back to Dave the Diver. I think an important thing that we probably should have mentioned much earlier on in this podcast, but important to just kind of shoehorn in now that we think about it. This game, as of this recording, it's August 9th, is still, it has been officially launched, but they're still regularly patching it and updating it. So
That's true.
we're making commentary on this game as of August 9, 2023. I watched this game grow from its infancy and have loved the tweaks that they've done. I'm not going to go through like the whole change log, but some notable changes that they made that just like completely made the gameplay experience way, 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 way better. So you know how you're in the depths and you have the flashlight you have to shine on the little sea tubes or whatever they're called?
Yes.
Yeah,
the
the worms.
UV flashlight.
Yeah. That thing didn't recharge. That thing was just an expendable item you had to hope
yeah.
you find another one of.
Gross.
That was an early on thing that people were like, hey, you know what sucks? This stupid flashlight. Can we just... Oh, and I think you couldn't use weapons to like stab them either. Like you had to have the flashlight. and if you ran out, you're just boned.
You could use
Question
you can use
about-
weapons to stab them.
Yeah, you can use your knife and other weapons to attack the thing, so you don't necessarily have to have a flashlight. But in earlier versions of the game, I believe only the flashlight or the pendant that you could get would work. So that was a big notable change. They've revamped a lot of the boss fights because honestly, some of these boss fights were hard, like actually really hard. And I played versions of this game where they were harder, and the enemies had more like bullshit AI tracking. And so they've listened to the community who were like, I've been frustrated on this boss fight. They're like, attack tracking is absurdly good. There's like no way to win unless you have these specific items. So they've really listened to some of the boss fights. I'm trying to think of some other really notable adjustments. Oh, they made they've done a lot to adjust the values of what you get from fish when you capture them alive versus harpooning them or shooting them. Like some fish that there's just fewer of, they increase the number of pieces that you get from each fish appropriately, which made many fish types that were previously just not viable work.
Yeah, like if you only got 5 pieces of tuna when you caught a tuna, it'd be a problem.
Right. I think you get like 7 or 8 when you carve the tuna or whatever. So like they've done a lot to listen to the community feedback and make quality of life adjustments. Oh, there wasn't a sort feature before. You sorted the fish by price. We didn't have that before.
Oh no.
We didn't have ways to sort menus in the first game. Oh God, speaking of menus, when you opened up your inventory, right? You couldn't just hold the button down to like scroll the menu. You had to tap every time. I'd have like 100 items in my inventory. Oh, and here's something else.
Painful.
You know the maximum weight that Dave can carry in the game?
Yes.
Okay, the actual maximum weight you can hold, I believe, was 260. So you can get a special backpack called the Eco Watchers backpack, which is the reward for completely finishing Eco Watchers. I've got problems with that because why give the players a capacity increasing item like at the end of the game when it kind of stops mattering? That's a different issue. But you can get that, and then the heaviest thing you can get would be having, I believe it's 216 kilograms, and then you carve a Greenland shark, which is 20 pounds, to go up to, what was it? Did I say
That'd be 40 if you carve it twice.
No, it's something. I must have gotten the numbers a little bit wrong. Oh, it's like whatever. You have to carve a Greenland shark and get its rare drop at the same time as the last item you get, because you'll get both items simultaneously, and you can over encumber yourself up to a certain point. So I think it was 260 pounds was like the absolute max that Dave could hold. In earlier versions of the game, it was way more abusable how much you could over encumber Dave. It was like now in this version of the game, however many kilograms Dave can carry, I think it's like 10 or 12 more kilograms you can carry than what Dave.
It's a hard limit of like 10 or 12 more than your max.
It used to be your max times 1.5.
Oh no!
And so it got crazy. I was over there. I was down in the Big Blue Hole for hours, stuffing Dave's pockets, moving at a slow pace.
Yeah, that's
because
just
I
bad
didn't
experience.
Care. As you all know, I do not respect my own time. I am ready to get 300 pounds of fish meat if it takes me 2 real life hours, but it marginally progresses my restaurant a little bit.
You know, when Gino said that Billy picked this game, he was like, this doesn't really sound like a game that is going to involve a lot of grinding. And then after like 3 dives, I was like, I can see where this is going.
And I never actually finished the point that I made about restaurant staff earlier, which is the reason why you care about hiring all the staff and training them up at least to a decent amount is because the late game recipes require special like seasonings and condiments, and you can only reliably get them by sending your restaurant staff out to procure them. And so you want as many staff as possible trained up at least to level like 10 or 15 so that they can reliably get good quantities of like soy sauce, ginger, miso, like whatever the high level ingredients or the high level recipes are. You can't just bank on RNG finding them down in the dives. You have to
you only get like one every, there's only so many ingredients at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, and I mean, I need like to level 10 a recipe. Sometimes you need like 100 like misos or whatever. Yeah. Like that's unreasonable to get on dives. So you have to send your staff for that. Yeah, even for me, I would consider that a waste of my time. But
we found the limit, folks.
We have.
Billy came back. We found the limit. I feel good about this. Thank you, Pete.
Yes, this was a good game. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a good pick, Billy.
Thank you, Em.
Thank you. This is a game that you really need to play to fully understand what is at work here. Just seeing like all of the moving pieces, I don't think we did it justice in describing it.
No, you need to play it.
You need to play it. This is a good game. It's worth the money that you would spend on it, just to see like the dream sequence is the big one, but it's very impressive. I want to see what they make next.
Tis. And thank you, Billy. Welcome back.
Thanks, everybody, for having me on this special 200th episode. Something that I've been doing recently since my life has changed, for the better, but I have less time to game, is I've been really interested in the kind of comfy, cozy gaming. And Dave the Diver, although I described it as a game where you grind, was a very relaxing, calming, comfy, cozy game. And I'm big into the cozy gaming movement. Playing games like Terraria, Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, just some nice, crafting or farming sim games are, up my alley right now. I'm still playing, insanely hard. I'm still playing Elden Ring. I'm playing a game called The Last Spell right now, punishingly hard. I'm playing V Rising really hard. These are all really, really good games that are punishingly difficult, but I've awakened to the comfy, cozy gaming scene, and I'm just so happy that Dave the Diver is a part of that for me, because I feel like although I've really kind of mastered Dave the Diver and all of its systems, I could put Dave down for like a year or two and then come back to it and say, I want to like play through Dave the Diver again. I could actually see myself going through Dave the Diver again and having a good time, because they put a bunch of work into developing their character so well, and their mini cutscenes are so rewarding. And I think the gameplay itself is fun. It's a really fun gameplay experience. So thanks for having me on to talk about this game. It's been a fun game to watch develop, and yeah, maybe I'll come back for another guest episode soon.
We'll see you on the 300th episode.
Yeah, guys, definitely.
I agree. Yeah, so this game was a good time. Reminder, so before we sign off, reminder that the next game we're going to play is Chex Quest. And we might, so I played the original, I've finished the original and the remake. I might suggest we check out the Captain Crunch video game that also came as a box pack-in, because finishing Chex Quest turns out when you're an adult, much easier than previously as a child. So we might want to throw on another shrimp on the Barbie here. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. In the immortal words of Jimathan Buffett, if there's a heaven for me, I'm sure there's a beach attached. And I think Dave the Diver taught us all that. I think it touched us all. So till next time, peace.
Break it down.